is a professor of sculpture and the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Fine Arts at the Polytechnic University of Valencia. As I said, she's not here today, but her partner in research is Professor Manuel Lafarga, Professor of Music History at the Conservatory of Valencia. His doctoral thesis was devoted to polyphonic practices in ancient Greek and Roman music, and that was in 2017. He's taught both music and the history of aesthetics for more than 25 years at various higher education centers across Spain. His teaching and research explores neuroscience, human evolution, and ancient musicology. His research team, many of whom are here, I'm thrilled to say, has devoted the last 7 years to the wedding at Cana, beautiful canvas, which we're going to see quite a bit, and maintains a webpage on the topic. Today, he will join us to discuss a funeral sung mass for Giorgione at San Giorgio Maggiore and his pending Venetian citizen right. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lafarga.
Good morning. First time, many thanks to the 16th Century Studies Conference and the Scientific Committee, particularly to Jennifer Marada Silva and Luba Friedman, and equally to the audience for paying attention to our work. Our topic is a very relevant one for art history, specifically for Cinquecento and Venetian Renaissance. However, it has been forgotten and ignored during near 5 centuries. To us, it is a privilege and of course a true pleasure to be here in Baltimore as emissaries or messengers of these two egregious characters. This will be alike our public posthumous tribute to both of them, especially at Maryland, the land of Mary. Giorgio da Castelfranco, named Giorgione, and his lost Venetian right, as the presentation's title points to, and Paolo Cagliari, named Veronese, who endured the countless changes suffered during 15 months by his own posthumous homage to his deceased colleague. The characteristic Veronese's maniera is well known. He has been called the Etruscan devil of mannerism by Stefano Ciuffi, due to his ability for blending, inflecting, and articulating in the same scene both sacred and profane. In this case, perhaps the most notorious, thought the inclusion of a funeral sung mass, a peculiarly Venetian one, in the middle of a profane wedding, and the later at time included in the context of a biblical marriage, the first Jesus miracle according to John's Gospel. Our mother looks at this first original vocal ensemble as Giorgione's lost Venetian citizen right when he died early at Lazzaretto. However, the commission of Benedictine monks of San Giorgio Maggiore turned in a very tiring enterprise on a very frequented scaffold. Among other transformations, the author was compelled to mutate the nature and arrangement of the central musical ensemble up to 4 times, perhaps 5. As it can be observed from the radiographies of the canvas obtained in 1989. Some of these images were published by Louvre Museum 3 years later, in 1992, by Lola Fayan Dumas. The only direct testimony for all these avatars comes from one of the monks, editor, historian, and poet, Benedetto Guidi, who contemplated the works daily from the beginning. He bequeathed us a brief poem alluding to the Veronese's canvas as Mille Dolci Errori, 1,000 sweet errors. He had assumed his votes at San Giorgio 14 years earlier, on March 21, 1551. He was a younger monk among the Benedictine authorities, to the viewer's right, who were responsible for the commission. He was 20 years old in 1562, and 32 when he wrote his poem 3 years later. There is one only mention for the presence of Giorgione in the canvas, the protagonist of the central scene as designed by Veronese in origin. 1 century after the commission, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, minister of the King of France, visited the monastery in 1671. Few years later, he left us a testimony which have been part of the legend till the addition of our own works. According to the Venetian monks, Giorgio da Castelfranco was also present at Canvas. The fact that any report of all that happened during the 15 months of Canvas completion has arrived to us is an extremely curious and notable one, with the exception of the two allotted sources. Both are direct because they origin from San Giorgio Maggiore, and the most relevant one even from an ocular witness. Moreover, attending both to the fact that the picture was immediately renowned from its beginnings in Italian lands and beyond, and that the refectory was continuously visited by international authorities, diplomatic and ecclesiastical, in addition to relevant artists comparable to Vasari's statue. The Florentine maestro visited Venice just 3 years later, and he did also the art gallery of Grimani family, where Giorgione's self-portrait was displayed. However, he did no mention of what we already have documented. We think that this ominous and near absolute silence in the historical sources, except for the few fragmentary legends previously documented by our works, could be linked to the identity of many of the guests for the biblical banquet, an intellectual network of coevals, those depicted in gray. All of them were high prelates and ecclesiastics, mainly Venetians, who advocated for the peace with reformed lands during the decades earlier to conclusion of the Council of Trent. We are showing the molding of their faces in yellow. However, it is probable that there are someone more. As they called themselves, the spirituali, were protected by the emperor himself and by the philo-imperial nobility in Italian lands, especially those Romans and Neapolitans, the Colonna, and also the Gonzaga. Some of our illustrious guests were persecuted by Roman authorities. Up to 13, as far as we know of them, those depicted in dark pink. 3 of them were processed, and 3 were not because of their earlier death, while another 7 were directly or indirectly executed, most of them earlier to conclusion of the Canvas and the Council of Trent. The composition shows the original consort with Benedetto Cagliari's left arm while holding the still non-existent miraculous wine, as these were the left arm of his own brother when Paolo Cagliari was a lutenist during the intermediate phase leading to second consort rearrangement. This second ensemble will be illustrated by my partners in the second part of this presentation, tomorrow, Saturday. At this moment, in fact, Benedetto was painting a small canvas, Modello, with his left hand in front of the Benedictine table. We are showing the series of successive chain consort which will be detailed by Penelope Sanz and Jorge Camarero, from the disappearance of the funeral mass and harpsichord till the ultimate violas da gamba consort with Diego Ortiz, which will not be detailed because it has been already analyzed in several previous publications. From the second consort up to the Canvas conclusion, all ensembles were already instrumental, composed of the same types arrangement registers. The 2 absent elements now are the harpsichord and the vocal quartet, beside the small canvas which was being painted by the author's brother. We will show it at the end of the presentation. The critical detail which undoubtedly betrays the funeral sung mass is still visible in our days in the center itself of the canvas. This new Veronese artifice consists in 4 fingers peeping beside the cornetist's back, which do not belong to any character in the current canvas. The spine of the score, which was read by the vocal quartet, can be alike appreciated, sustained by one of the 2 cantadori di morti. The second monk's capline behind him is currently the Jesus Christ sleeve. We think that Veronese recovered this key in the final design because he could conceive them as he did with the score. However, he left them incongruently visible. We have proposed the intentional negligence as suggested by Vasari to leave some elements unfinished with perceptive effects intentions. The only authors who referred to and described the X-ray images of the canvas are Lola Faillanduma and Peter Bassano, a descendant from the Venetian Bassano's musician family. Faillanduma was the author of the chapter devoted to analyze these images in the magnificent book edited by Louvre Museum in 1992. She described many altered elements in the underlying designs, however not in an articulate way, because at this moment there was not a coherent model like this we are introducing here. There are any other publications on our topic. Giorgione's loot peg box is exactly the hand of the current servant in between Jesus Christ and Mary, a hand which operates anything. It's just perched without apparent function. We have chosen the negative of the X-rays because it's better definition for the Giorgione lute spec box and neck. Oh, excuse me. This is the superposition on top of our designs, obtained from the X-ray images published in 1992. At this point, we can already show the whole composition, except Benedetto Cagliari's engaging. The blue lute linen on the keyboard box is our license. The performer's left hand in green can be appreciated over the instrument in its correct position. This hand has established an artifact which led the expert to confession from its publication more than 30 years ago, because it looks like to be settled over the neck of a future tenor violin just before Ortiz's arrival to San Giorgio Maggiore. The incorporeal harpsichordist's excuse me. The incorporeal harpsichordist's head and left hand, linked to who it was believed to be the current Paolo, however with crossed legs, generated an impossible and strongly linear cyborg who produced any coherent nor harmonious sound. The true current Paolo's hand can be appreciated at the top of the neck. He was the owner of this tenor violin before becoming finally a viola gambista. My partners will show you tomorrow both correct violin consorts. The final owners, both for the right clavecinist arm and his own body, will be shown later. In fact, this art is the bridge room arm, Alfonso de Avalos. Let us to observe the same elements over the X-ray images, also in a negative. Titian was primarily jester, the current orange buffoon, while Tintoretto occupied exactly the space in between his partner and the monk who sustained the score. We have called Paolo one Frankenstein to this former Paolo, because his dismantling, alike that of his successor Paolo II, also Frankenstein, generated different characters and words, as we will show in some minutes, and again during our next presentation. Our generation of the standing silent lute, which rests on the keyboard box, can be observed in the foreground. It has its square angle back box behind the current score over the table, facing Veronese. This is our license. It's easy to appreciate lute form designs for the configuration of the other dog. Our model postulates that the guest's frontal table must have descended as a consequence of the former required changes of design, allowing the Cagliari brothers to escape of future complications. It means the dismantling of the original consort. We think that pilasters of the balustrade and the hollows in between them were both intended to be the convertible template for many of the guests' portraits through slight displacements of their respective contours. We have duplicated over in blue the contour of the current guests in red. The upper balcony, with a lutenist and perhaps some singers, descended in a body equally at these former moments. We think it happened concomitant with the disappearance of the first consort, because its wall design was already completed. As the authors one and Giorgione himself did. As we have already suggested, it is possible that they could be lutes in echo for the funeral mass. The descent of balcony is exactly the height of balustrade, and equally the exact distance between balustrade and the current frontal table. In the canvas sketch from Louvre Museum, coming from Veronese's Bottega, it can be appreciated how the location of guests from this table, the central table, was planned directly over the balustrade. The global design of the canvas has two different vanishing points, one for the ascending lines and another one for the descending building's cornices. The layout of the table lines shows how the current central table has both an incoherent perspective and an inadequate surface to contain any dish nor delicacy. It shows alike how the central table must be placed in origin as depicted in the Louvre sketch. The global design of the canvas we are showing the wall silhouette for the original console. The molding of the current Paolo allows to observe the position of the harpsichord player, in addition to Benedetto Cagliari's right arm extended over the harpsichord. This was the link between music and painting during the first concert, when his left arm was painting the previous modello in face of Benedictines, as we will show in the next section. The protagonist of the Sang Mass was in fact Giorgione. However, Veronese portrayed him inverted from his two known self-portraits. In our opinion, Paolo used that from Brunswick Museum, as it was a Grimani property, the family who protected Giorgione at life. We are showing the superposition, We are showing the superposition of our own designs obtained from the radiographies on top of the quoted self-portrait, now inverted. According to Vasari, this self-portrait was displayed in the Grimani's art gallery in the times of the wedding. We have not a convincing hypothesis for the disappearance of harpsichord and the vocal quartet dispersion, because the central scene must be accorded with the onus of commission already at the beginnings. Just the audacious idiosyncratic Veronese maniera, that of a consummate maestro in the technique of mixturing sacred and profane, as he showed again, including a mass for the dead in the middle of a nuptial banquet. Perhaps in addition to the inconvenience of 4 active singers in a refectory where talking was forbidden. However, it is doubtless that the alluded to events accelerated relevant changes affecting what happened later, as we will show in a moment. After 4 mutations of the central musical ensemble, Giorgione finally remained hidden again, buried for a second time, behind the face of the new guests who arrived to San Giorgio Maggiore at the end of summer in 1563, the maestro de capilla of Neapolitan court, Diego Ortiz, whose ultimate facial silhouette is shown in pink to the left. So, this was the painter's second death. So curiously, this pretty picture, now at Berlin National Gallery, was painted in Rome in 1856 by the German painter Otto Gottfried Wichmann. 11 years earlier, the Henry Frederick Holt's art paper in the Gentleman magazine of 1867. According to Holt, this first version of the wedding at Cana arrived to England in 1798, the same year that Napoleon's troops brought the big canvas to France. We have improved the Modelo of license. His report already allowed us to identify Reginald Paul Alvis Priuli and also the citizen patron for the commission, Girolamo Glimani. Nevertheless, Girolamo was not placed where we are seeing him today in the canvas, but leaned out over the corpse of his protege, the Veronese harpsichordist. The composition has been molded to show several elements. First, the two mute pulse instruments over the harpsichord. It means death in a Mannerist key. One of them probably held by Benedetto with his right arm to set the link, the artifice, which connected music to painting, called paragone. Second, the specular generation of Titian after the already dismissed body of Paolo I while playing harpsichord. And finally, the right arm of this original performer, which will be later transferred to Alfonso de Avalos, the alleged bridegroom, at the end of the table for international authorities. This is the only art cartoon in the canvas which fits in this position, exactly for this function. The translation of the whole Girolamo shape over the current Titians, one just differs in both head contours, while the patron's head fits in just above the painter's one. In fact, both the bald line as the high covering Girolamo's parietals are appreciable over the X-ray images of the canvas. According to Henry Holt, the small modello, which had been painted by Benedetto, was the property of Girolamo Grimani, and it was required by the abbot of San Giorgio Maggiore, Girolamo Scrochetto, for his own commission. Holt, the British antiquarian, and Wichmann, the German painter, could never know the existence of the modello, except for the case of the veracity of the source. Unfortunately, as Zanetti the Younger and others did he made no mention of it. We could not get their portraits. The first world expert in this publication, Emily Lorraine de Montluzzi, in personal communication, could not help us in this enterprise, nor related both the year of 1867 and the editors. According to our model, the Modello generated an infinite mathematical recurrence in the monumental canvas because the inclusion of the commission itself inside the canvas, being in this way the first known example for this kind of artifice in Western art. While the harpsichord was physically present, Girolamo, as he was the main patron, could be at the center of the scene contemplating the Veronese's chords. And then Benedetto could prosecute his task with the small canvas using his left hand. However, when the harpsichord disappeared, Girolamo must go out to occupy his seat at the guest's table, and the previous Modello must disappear alike. This is the moment when Benedetto ceased to paint and mutated his own stance. He assumed Veronese's left arm to hold the cup with the new and cured miraculous wine. We may show at this moment the wall sequence for the first concert, the original funeral mass, with its own previous molding over both the current canvas and the radiography. In this way, this was when the X-ray images were obtained in June 1989, Giorgione's second resurrection. Over the radiography, we are showing the eventual intermediate consort 1B, in between the original mass and the lute ensemble, the second consort. Veronese is already erect while holding his first lute, and pressing the strings with the future left arm of his own brother, Benedetto. The harpsichord is still present in this scene. Finally, well, perhaps you may see better, but finally, in this great image, we are showing the artistic recreation by one of us, Jorge Camarero, following all these observations. The typical funerary context of Venetian sung masses was being preserved in the three cases. For the two former versions with harpsichord, because the presence of voices. For lute ensemble, they show you tomorrow. For lute ensemble, because Giorgione's double ascendance over his live colleagues, musical and painting, in addition to his silent and absent attitude. We can appreciate here how Paolo Cagliari's silhouette generated onwards the mirrored Titian's one up to the ultimate ensemble with Ortiz, and how Giorgione was always the hero of the central musical event up to this moment. To conclude, it can be also observed the sequence of the successive concerts, which will be illustrated by my partners in the complementary presentation to mine. We are showing our publications to the present day. The first one devoted to Diego Ortiz, which already announced Giorgione's presence in the canvas. This was 2018. The second one with our presentation at the 2019 Lucca International Conference, Luigi Boccherini Foundation. Third place, an historical tale relating the avatars of the canvas in a literary style, and a brief review of the state of the art till that moment. In the central row, the two central covers down show the conformation of second concert lutes and how Paolo II Frankenstein was generated from all the previous cartoons. And the first group, next to this, the first group of characters which we think have identified following Holt's legend and our own observations is one of the books by them. Some coeval artists, patrons, and ecclesiastics. The other two, also circulated, published by Musica et Figura, the magazine of University of Padua, are devoted to Diego Ortiz. Third row shows our last and very recent edition, devoted to the legends on the canvas, and also those related to Giorgione. Next, the reconstruction of the hidden trumpet behind Verone's right side. And the last two, the arrangement of first concert, as we have introduced it here, is by the. And finally, the mutation to the two successive violin bands, the third and fourth concert, as they will be introduced by my two partners, Penelope Sanz and Jorge Camarero, not in this very room, but I suppose, I think it's in the 6th floor. All publications. Yes, that's the, I think it's, all publications, 4 of them bilingual, are directly accessible at our internet address, except the 2 papers which are the property of Musica et Figura, the musicology magazine of University of Padua, where many of the guests, of our guests, studied and sojourned for a while. To summarize our exposition, and I conclude, we may observe all the elements, 11, in their respective places. The still non-existent figures in both corners, the current bridegroom and Domenico Grimani, the patron of Giorgione, one of the patrons of Giorgione at life. The Palladian Disegno, free of figures, for the end of both tables. Palladio is depicted in the canvas. In this way, there are exactly 12 guests to each side of Jesus Christ. We may appreciate the 2 betrothal, Eleanor de Austria and Francis I. There are, in fact, two weddings, and there are, in fact, 2 brides. The legend, what accepts the Academy, is that Alfonso de Avalos is married to Eleanor de Austria, who is the wife of Francisco I of France. This is incongruent. The current bride in the canvas is, in fact, Alfonso d'Avalos' wife, Maria de Aragona, one of spirituality, of course. The main protector of the spirituality was the emperor himself, and many other people I showed in yellow, or I cannot reveal at this moment their identities. This will be the future. Second time, the common right arm for Alfonso de Avalos and Paolo I Harpsichordist, whose head fits exactly inside his current left arm. Giorgione and the vocal consort, the servant with the only wine before Jesus Christ, who was hidden on the 2 elect singers. This was pointed in first time by Lola Fayan Dumas.
I think that's all we got.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
This is the original wine, a servant with a jar, and they both were gold rings. They probably were Venetian painter musicians, and covered the only original miraculous wine. In fact, the actual wine, the current one, is offered to Alfonso de Avalos, but by a black servant, and to the patron, civil patron of the canvas, by a little page behind the axilla of Benedetto Cagliari. I'm finished. I'm finishing. Be quiet. Don't worry. Yes, we may observe the common right, left arm for Pietro Aretino and Benedetto Cagliari. This red arm. Just a minute. The green arm, left arm, who is painting the Modello, is the right arm of Pietro Aretino inverted. And we may appreciate also Tintoretto and Titian former ubication, Girolamo Grimani former ubication, and the previous Modello owned by Grimani family. And, excuse me. And this we are contemplating here with the first look of Paolo Cagliari, with the left arm, who in the future sustain the miraculous wine, is the intermediate consort, 1B, we call it 1B. At this moment, Benedetto Cagliari is still painting, and the miraculous wine did not exist. As it can be appreciated, Aretino's right arm was in origin this cartoon, Benedetto's former left arm, while painting his Modello in face of Benedictines. And of course, as it was a Venetian painter musician's previous arm, his left hand shows a golden ring in the thumb. Giorgio da Castelfranco, requiescat in pace. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was clearly an awful lot of work. Tremendous. I will open the floor to questions.